Hey everybody, welcome back to the HCU Athletics Insider Podcast. I'm the voice of HCU, Garrett Jones. It's great to be back. We're reshaping what this podcast is going to be, and we have a great way to start it out here in our February episode. We'll be joined today by a six-time MLB All-Star, a 2011 World Series champion with the St. Louis Cardinals, 1,905 hits in his major league career, mostly spanning right here in Houston, the head coach of HCU, Lance Berkman, ahead of the baseball season getting started on Friday. Coach in his second season at the helm of the Huskies. Really looking forward to our conversation. Think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. Here with HCU head coach Lance Berkman. Coach, first off, thanks so much for making time for the Husky Sports Network here this afternoon. It's awesome to get to sit down with you ahead of you guys going on your first road trip of the season at UTRGV. And obviously, we were just talking about it. You know, it's a big time of year for you guys starting up the season. What are some of the emotions that you're feeling as you start year number 2 here at HCU?
Well, I think there's excitement for sure as we head into getting to play real games and not just playing inter-squad games. So I'm anxious to see what what these guys can do against outside competition. We really like the group of freshmen that we brought in. And we have a couple of transfers also that are sophomores and juniors that I'm excited to see how they're going to fit in. So I think the overriding emotion is just excitement. We're ready to go.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that you just mentioned there were some of the underclassmen. I remember just hearing some of the interviews that you've done since you've gotten here, also having a conversation with you last year. That was the number one thing you guys wanted to emphasize was getting those high school players in what you called the most talented recruiting area in the country. What are some advantages that recruiting players out of high school bring versus bringing in a junior college transfer?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just you have an opportunity to build your culture because you have guys that are going to be in your program and under your supervision, so to speak, for 3 to 4 years instead of, junior college guys, it could be 1 to 2 years. So you have a longer runway for development. I think the energy that those guys bring is refreshing. A lot of times, junior college players are kind of world weary. The junior college circuit is not the greatest in terms of facilities and travel and that sort of thing. So you kind of get a guy that is a bit world weary, whereas these younger kids are they're eager, they're ready to go, they're excited to learn, and we got to put our own fingerprint on them. That we're kind of building them into the young men that we want them to be without any outside interference.
For sure. Year one, you guys finished 18-36, 11-13 in Southland play. That's a bit kind of misleading because you guys were 11-7 at one point, right in the thick of things in the league. Obviously not how you wanted you guys to finish there in the first season, but I think it's fair to say that you guys put some really good things on the field. I'm curious, did you guys kind of feel like you were playing with house money in year number 1 because you wanted to develop the year down the line, or were you encouraged by that start in Southland play?
Well, I mean, last year there's really no good way you could put a spin on it. I mean, it was bad.
Right.
We were just not good. 18-36 is unacceptable, and we did have a period there in conference play where we kind of got it rolling a little bit and we started to play better. But at the end of the day, we didn't even come close to getting the job done, and had a colossal collapse, in my opinion. The last couple of weeks of the season, so it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and I think the positive spin that you could put on it if you were looking for one would be I think we learned a lot. I think as a coaching staff we're pretty young. Even though I think we have a lot of baseball experience, we don't have a ton of Division I coaching experience. So there were a lot of lessons that we learned through our experience last year that I think has made us better as we go into this year. And we're hoping that we can keep the positive momentum. I think with the coaching change, there's always that honeymoon period where people are excited about it and to see what is going to transpire in a new regime, and you kind of have to capitalize on that pretty quickly or else it fades away. So we're hoping that this year can be a big step forward so that we can just keep it going.
For sure. If you could boil it down to one thing that kind of led to what you said, a collapse there, losing 7 straight games to end the season, what was it?
Well, I think we had a lot of guys that ran out of gas on the mound, and I think we had we brought in some guys that had not pitched the year before that we were relying on to pitch a lot of innings, and I think they and due to injury, I mean we had Matthew Charles was one of our weekend starters, and he had not pitched at all the year before because his arm, he's coming off of Tommy John surgery, and then we had Will Rapole, who hadn't pitched the year before, and Jared Birch hadn't pitched the year before. So we had, a lot of our pitchers had not been exposed to as many innings as they were last year, and I feel like they got tired. And when you have a hard time getting it down on the mound, it makes everything else that much more difficult. So I think that was probably the number one factor.
Yeah. When you're building a program pretty much from the ground up like you're doing, do you guys have a timeline as far as year 3 or 4 where you're looking for attack and looking for your guys to be seasoned and possibly competing for a conference title, or do you just kind of look at it year to year?
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to prognosticate, but
Yeah.
you just don't know what the landscape is going to look like until you get there. So I am very excited about this group of freshmen that we brought in this year, and I'm even more excited about the group that's coming in next year. So I really feel like, we've said in here amongst ourselves that once this group that's freshmen this year get to be juniors and the group that's coming in next year are sophomores, then I anticipate having a really tough team to beat. So if we keep everybody healthy and we keep everybody here with the transfer portal and those kind of things, I mean, there's factors that are a little bit outside your control, but I do really. I'm very excited to see what will happen when we get a little maturity on these kids that we're bringing in the next couple of years.
Who are some of the freshmen that you anticipate seeing the field a lot this year?
I mean, all of them. I mean,
Really?
they're all going to play. So, Damian Ruiz is one that stands out. He's probably going to be an everyday guy for us. Dylan LaRue is going to be our starting catcher. He's a freshman. We got Trent Baker, who was probably going to start for us in center field, and we got Cash Benavidez, who's going to see a lot of time at second base and third base also. So Luke Bard is another guy that he, when he first came in, I was thinking, well, I don't know how much action he's going to get, but he's literally forced his way into the lineup. So he's another catcher, so he'll split time with Dylan behind the plate, and he's also probably going to see some action at third base. He's a good athlete, so we can move him around a little bit. But I'm thrilled about all the freshman position guys. I hope I haven't forgotten anybody because we have a really good group, and and then on the mound we've got some guys that I think are gonna contribute. I think Baylor Bauman is one that is going to see a lot of innings. Jonathan Valdez is going to see a lot of innings, and then we've got guys like Nolan Wilson who is going to pitch out of the bullpen for us, and so the group of freshmen, Daniel Farrow could get some action. He's got a really good arm, and the thing about freshmen is you just have to be prepared that they're going to have some growing pains, and they're very talented, but they're going to make some freshman mistakes, and we need to play them to season them, and so we're prepared for that. But it should be a fun team to watch.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Went to the same high school as Baylor Bauman too, so I'm excited to see him play this year for sure.
Yeah, he's been good.
Yeah,
he's been good.
How about some of the transfers that you're bringing in that you anticipate making an impact this year?
Well, Samuel Benjamin from U of H is a guy that I think gives us a dynamic component to our offense. He's one of the best base runners I've seen. Ty Hodge is going to be our starting shortstop whenever he gets healthy, transfer from A&M. That was kind of a big blow in the early going here when he went down with a hand injury, and we're hoping to get him back in the next couple of weeks because that really solidifies everything else. But he's a guy that I think is going to be a great player for us. So those two guys in particular from the transfer portal. Of course, Walker Zander we got from A&M. He's going to be our Saturday starter. We're expecting him to play a big role in our rotation. And then Justin Berry Smith, who transferred from South Alabama, is going to pitch out of the bullpen. And he might have the best stuff on the staff, the best arm, and it's just a matter of getting him a little bit more consistently in the strike zone. And if we do, then I think he's going to be a real weapon.
Yeah, you mentioned the rotation. Do you guys have it figured out at this point, or do you anticipate kind of changing it as you go?
Well, it'll evolve. I mean, I think we know that. That we're going to start Rye Gunter on Friday, and we're going to start Walker Zander on Saturday, and then Sunday's kind of TBD because we're trying to manage the Baylor game on Tuesday also, so there's some flexibility there. And it's tough the first couple of weeks of the season because we have two really tough midweek games, Baylor and A&M, back-to-back weeks, and trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way to give ourselves the best chance to win all the games and not just, push all of our chips in on one game. So we're looking at it to try to, hey, we want to win the series on the weekend, but we also want to be competitive in the midweek games and, kind of jostling the pitching rotation to accommodate that. And the added to that is the challenge of making sure guys are not putting too much strain on their arm in the early season when the weather may not be, it's not the warmest a lot of times, although it looks like we're going to get some decent weather here to start. But that's always a consideration, is you don't want guys to throw more than about 70 pitches or so in their first time out, and that means that they're limited in the number of innings they can pitch. So you're looking to try to figure out who's going to pitch the rest of those games, and it's just kind of it's almost like doing a Sudoku puzzle with your pitching staff, and so but that's part of the fun of it also.
Yeah, I've noticed some of the guys that you're returning to that made an impact in the field last year. Who are you excited about that you're bringing back 1 through 9?
Well, we've got Austin Roccaforte, who was really our best player last year. He's coming back, and can play a variety of roles. He's such a good athlete. He did a great job for us in center field last year. This year we had him pegged as our starting second baseman, but with the injury to Ty, he's had to go over to short, so he's going to end up being our starting shortstop. Tyler LaRue is a guy that last year was really starting to hit, then he got hurt, and then he came back at the end, and he kept hitting, and he's just been hitting ever since.
Will's brother, right?
Yeah, it's Dylan's
brother. My mistake,
yeah.
Sorry.
So he's going to see a lot of action at first base for us, and he's a returning guy that's good. And, we have some really solid players, Reed Chumley, Logan Letney, older guys that were here last year that I think are going to contribute. Parker Edwards is a guy that he's probably our biggest power threat, and he'll hit right in the middle of our lineup. And Parker is a guy that probably single-handedly won 2 or 3 games for us last year, and he looks even better to me this year. So I'm expecting big things from him.
Yeah, with Parker specifically, I remember you mentioned pretty much carrying through Southland play. I also remember his plate discipline as well. You mentioned a lot of talented catchers on your roster. With a guy like Parker, are you looking to kind of move him at a different spot in the lineup, or how are you going to manage that?
Yeah, he'll DH and he'll play some first base and he'll catch also. I mean, we have kind of it's an interesting catching situation because we have 4 guys that are pretty capable. And we're gonna have to manage it the best we can. I try to keep guys involved, keep them in the flow of being able to play and have at bats. And those are the kind of things that I feel like sort themselves out as you start playing, and somebody will step up and be an obvious choice for this guy's going to get to catch the majority of the innings. Right. And this lineup works the best, so you kind of use that first part of the season to feel out that process. And by the time you get to conference play, you just hope that, okay, we know who our best 9 guys are, and we're going to run with that on a consistent basis.
Yeah. How do you approach managing a bullpen at the collegiate level? Because I know there's a lot of different philosophies on it. Are you looking for your starters to go 4 or 5 and then turn to some solid guys in the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th and 9th innings, or are you looking at a kind of a different philosophy there?
Yeah, I'm more of an old school guy. Like, I want my starter to pitch as long as he can. I mean, the reason that they're starters is because usually they're better pitchers, and they have, or at the very least, they have a broader arsenal of pitches that they can attack hitters with. And by that I mean, they have 3 quality pitches instead of maybe just a 2-pitch mix. So makes it tougher on the hitters. So we're going to try to get as much out of our starters as we can every time out, and then we'll patchwork it together on the back end. And one of the adjustments we made from last year to this year is we recognize that in the course of a 3-game series, and then of course you've got the game on Tuesday, it's hard to have specialized relievers. In other words, guys that just pitch 1 inning.
Right.
We need guys that can pitch multiple innings. So Clay Vanderland, my pitching coach, and I sat down and we're like, hey, every one of these guys is going to be built up to be able to throw 3 innings. So that'll be an interesting adjustment, see how that plays out, because what we'll probably end up doing is, when the starter goes as long as he can go, our next best guy is going to do the same thing. We'll just run him out there as long as he can go, and then we just keep that way that if you can finish 1 game with 2 guys, then you have your whole bullpen available for the next 2 days over the weekend, and it gives you a lot more flexibility and options. Whereas if you're pitching one, let's say on a Friday night, if the starter goes 7 and then you go 8, 9 with 2 different guys, so they can't pitch the next day, and you hope that they bounce back for Sunday. Whereas being able to save some of those arms, we're one guy can pitch 3 innings, I think is going to be a better strategy for us at this point with the depth of our bullpen.
For sure. And this is your second year, obviously. How much has your coaching style changed, maybe to your surprise, over your first 2 years? And how much of it do you kind of expect to be, okay, this is how I expected coming into the collegiate game? Because I know this was something that you wanted to break into for a while. You went back to school to get your degree and make sure that you were good to go to be a collegiate coach. Has your style changed a little bit than you anticipated coming into your second year?
Yeah, probably not as angry as I thought I would be. When I coached in high school, I was pretty fiery and, still was fairly close to my playing career. And I think some of that competitive fire was still burning pretty hot. And not that I'm not competitive or don't want to win here, but I think the older I've gotten, the more I'm able to see the bigger picture and realizing that this is a process and that, we're building something here that is not going to happen overnight. And so I think just a little more patience and maybe a little more mellow. I guess maybe that happens to you when you get older anyway. But I think that's probably been one surprising difference for me personally. Is just, hey, we're here to develop these guys. We're here to love on them. We're here to give them a great experience. And, of course, we're going to challenge them also. And I'm not saying, I still get frustrated plenty and can unload on some guys from time to time. But over the I guess for the most part, I would say it's just a little bit more laid back than I normally am.
Yeah, for sure. One of my some of my favorite stories I've heard you do in interviews and such are when you're recounting your stories with your head coach in college, Wayne Graham, 2003 College World Series champion over at Rice, who you self-described as a psychopath in coaching college baseball. Mm-hmm. Do you see any Coach Graham in your coaching style?
Oh, no doubt about it. I think about him almost on a daily basis. Just you can't help but borrow from the coaches that you greatly appreciate their style. And he did so much for me in my career and helped shape me into the player that I eventually became. I quote him all the time. I think about him all the time. I feel like, what would Coach Graham do in this situation kind of thing when I'm coaching. So for sure he has a big impact on my philosophy and style.
Have you talked to him ever since you got the job?
Oh, yeah. I talked to him actually a couple of days ago. So I was asking him about what he thought, what we should do with our pitching rotation. And he still watches all the games, and he's very involved, tries to stay current with what we're doing. I think because Pat Hallmark at UTSA is one of his former players who's coaching now. And, of course, he's involved at Texas because Coach Pierce was an assistant for him. So there's 3 or 4 programs around the country that I think he follows because he has a connection or a tie to. So he knows what's going on and was able to give me some good advice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure he would have loved to play you head to head too, or at least manage the opposite dugout as well.
Yeah, I don't know. He probably would. He would love to beat the snot out of me.
Yes.
That's his whole deal. So.
Anybody who is listening, go look up Sean Casey's interview with Lance last year if you want to hear a hilarious story about the Scarlet Sea. That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's an all-time Wayne Graham story for sure. You guys are starting the season tomorrow, really. I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 15th. You guys get on the road on the 16th and head down to Edinburgh to play UT Rio Grande Valley in a 3-game set this weekend. Non-conference play, I know, is really interesting in collegiate baseball. You guys actually start out on the road for, about a month right before you come back to Husky Stadium. How did that come to be, and what non-conference games are you excited about this year?
Well, we had, it's a little bit of a fluky schedule where we don't have a home game till later in March, and the reason for that is we decided we were approached by the Space Cowboys, which is the Astros AAA affiliate, about being the host school for a mid-major tournament like they have at Minute Maid for the College Classic, and so we thought that would be a great opportunity for us to be kind of one of the title schools that are helping host this thing. And so we had to give up our home weekend to be able to do that. So we're really, we're not playing at Husky Stadium, but we're going to be in Houston quite a bit because we play our second weekend at the Space Cowboys, and then the fourth weekend we're at Rice, which is just right across town. So just the way it worked out this year, of course, I'd love to have a home series. And, last year we opened up at home with Rutgers, and we were home a little bit. But this year, just kind of the fluke of the schedule, although we will be competing around Houston. And as far as the non-conference games I love playing the old Southwest Conference schools. So, A&M and Baylor and U of H, those are 3 midweek games that I think are highlights for us. And, Going down to like Sam Houston is another place that I like. I think that's a great midweek for us because they're one of the premier mid-major programs in the state, certainly, but maybe nationally as well. And it's always good to kind of measure your progress against guys like that in those kind of games. So, those are I like all of those because they're close. It's convenient to get to them, and you get something out of them. The kids get great experiences if we go play in College Station or in Baylor. You get a Power 5 experience, or you go measure yourself against another good mid-major, and they're all right there. I mean, UTSA is the same way. We're going to go play Pat over there in San Antonio this year, and so I'm looking forward to that one as well.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Rice specifically. I know you got a little taste of it last year when you guys went there for a one-game set last year, right in the midweek.
That's right.
This year you're looking at 3, and you're against your former teammate Jose Cruz Jr. at Rice, and you got that connection too as well. What's that series going to be like for you?
Well, I mean, it's special to go back over there and to play. And Jose's a great guy, and we're still friends. We were road roommates my freshman year, so I've known Jose and the Cruz family forever. And of course, the Jose Sr. was my first base coach in Houston for many years. So just great people, and it's fun to go compete. And they have a new playing surface, which I'm excited to see. They've done a lot of good things over there, made some good changes, and so it ought to be a fun series. I mean, I'd love to beat them. That'd be a great win for us if we could somehow figure out a way to win that series. But just love to be competitive, and hopefully the games are a little more competitive. The one we played here was reasonably competitive, even though it was in the worst weather that I've seen maybe ever.
Like below 40, something like
raining,
that, cold wind.
Yeah, it was terrible. And then, of course, when we went over there to their place, they beat us pretty good. So I would really like to have a better showing this year than we did last year.
For sure. And, when you look at this year coming into the season, obviously you've got some returners on the field as well, but you also have some returners in your coaching staff as well. You mentioned Clay Vanderland and also Tyler Bremer, your assistant. What do those two guys bring to the table?
I love my staff. I mean, I wouldn't trade this staff for anything. I mean, those guys they're young, they're energetic, they're passionate about developing kids, not only in baseball but also in life. Great human beings, family guys, and then of course we added Sam McElreath as our volunteer, and he might be the best off-season acquisition we made, player or anything. I mean, this guy is unbelievable, and he's done a great job with our infielders and has sort of taken over that whole aspect, which I really, even though I played some first base, I'm not. Coaching middle infielders is not my forte. So we really felt like we needed somebody to come in and help develop our infielders, and he has taken the ball and run with it, and it's just been great. So the staff, this is, Tyler and Clay and I, this will be our third year to coach together, going all the way back to the University of St. Thomas. And it's just, it's a joy to come to work with those guys.
Yeah. With your long major league career, I'm curious, a lot of collegiate coaches will kind of rise up through maybe the high school ranks, work as you mentioned, your staff as well, maybe work on a collegiate staff, then work their way into a head coaching position. It's a little different, and we're seeing it more. You mentioned Jose Cruz over at Rice, obviously yourself here at HCU, coming with major league experience. Do you think that's an advantage compared to some of those other paths that I mentioned in collegiate level? How do you see that play into your coaching this year?
Well, I think it's valuable experience, no doubt. It's one of those things where, and no disrespect to college coaches that have gone the other route, but it's one of those deals where the major league experience. I can get college coaching experience, but they can never get major league playing experience, and so I think. There's a learning curve for sure for guys like me that are kind of thrust into the head role at the Division I level because there's way more to the job than just coaching baseball, and learning how to run an organization is really what you're doing, and there's a lot that goes into that. And former major league players are not necessarily the best at that because they've been catered to their entire life,
for sure.
And the coaching profession is all about catering to other people. So making that transformation can be difficult. I mean, it's a challenge, and there's a learning curve associated with it. But I do think that having major league experience, playing experience, is a big benefit to what you're doing, because I think it helps you really kind of distill the game down into what really matters. And I think one of the knocks on some college coaches is there's a lot of fluff. There's a lot of what we call eyewash or Johnny College rah-rah stuff that at the end of the day doesn't really impact the game. And I think if we can kind of cut through the fat and some of that and and get more to, hey, this is what wins and loses baseball games. This is what we're going to work on. This is what we're going to focus on. I think that former major league guys have a better handle on that than some. I'm not saying all, because there's some really, really good coaches out there that have not. You don't have to have played in the big leagues to be a good college coach, clearly. I mean, that's been proven. In fact, it many times is more of a hindrance than anything else. But I do think that there is some value to having that experience.
Yeah. I think you can make an argument. You've mentioned before that you think Houston is the most fertile recruiting area in the country. But I think you can make an argument that right now the baseball scene in Houston is better than it's ever been. Obviously, the Astros winning 2 titles, your former organization winning 2 titles in 5 years. You mentioned Rice is on the come up with a young coach. Obviously, what Todd Whitting has done at U of H. There's been a lot of great sceneries there. And then obviously, 3 programs, in addition to Texas Southern, in addition to St. Thomas, where you used to coach as well. There's just a ton of good baseball here in the city of Houston. How does that affect your recruiting pitch, and what do you think about the state of the game right now in this city?
Well, I mean, I would say city and statewide, it's maybe, as good as it's ever been.
Yeah.
I think there are so many good, with Texas Tech and TCU, and Baylor just got a new coach, Mitch Thompson, who I think is a great coach. He's had success everywhere he's been, so they're going to be good. You have, of course, Schlossnagle at A&M. They're going to be good. Pierce at Texas. They go to the College World Series every year, so it's like everywhere you turn, you have high-level baseball or high-level college programs. And the thing that's funny is the vast majority of all those players that fuel all those programs come from Houston. Or, there's just and maybe not all of them, but I mean, there's a lot of those programs are fueled by Houston area players. So to me, like this is there's never been a better time to be a college head coach in the Houston area, because the talent is always deep. The other programs are like you mentioned, very solid, and there's a lot of good competition. So it makes it a lot of fun to be active in this community at this time.
One of the big advantages of having a first year behind you now is you've seen a lot of the Southland Conference. You've been through conference play. You've been through a couple games in the tournament as well. When you look at the league this year, who do you think is the favorite, and how do you feel like seeing all those schools once before is going to help you this season?
Yeah, well, I think the favorite is still going to be McNeese and Southeast. I mean, they've been kind of the consistent powers in the conference, and there's some real advantages to being in Louisiana with tuition and whatnot. Both of those coaches do a great job with those programs, and I think those are the 2 teams to beat. They ended up in the final last year, and I think it was an epic game where Southeast ended up prevailing, but I look for both of those to be the toughest conference opponents. And then, I think Coach Silva and Thibodeau there has done a great job with Nichols, and they might be a sleeper, because they were very competitive last year with what I consider to be kind of a substandard talent roster. And I've heard through the grapevine that he's gotten some really good players in there, and so with his coaching acumen combined with some better talent, they could be a sleeper program to watch that's going to be hard to handle.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter the other day there was a D1 website that picked you guys to win the conference too. So there you go. Some guys are looking at the talent that you guys have brought in too is in the mix in the Southland. That's one of the best things about this league is that it's in a lot of sports, right? Football might be the exception. It gets a little top heavy, but you look at the things, men's basketball right now, women's basketball, softball, whatever it is, somewhat comparable sports. You feel like there's a wide open opportunity for anybody to compete, right?
It's winnable, yeah. I mean,
right.
There's no doubt about it. It's not like being in the SEC West where you've got to be at the very tip top in terms of your ability and recruiting and all of that to compete. And that's it's just that there's more parity. I mean, I think, and I think that's the way it is in a lot of mid-major conferences where it doesn't take a whole lot to rise to the top. And so we're in a good position. I feel like, if not this year, then going forward, to be very competitive in the conference.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking about the offseason, some of the things that you have on your plate before you actually start playing games. Curious, what's going on with your family these days? What'd you do over the offseason spending time with them?
Well, having 4 girls is busy, and 2 of them are out of the house now, and you would think that would mean that things slow down, but really it feels like it just spreads everything out because we made a run up to DBU where my second daughter is playing volleyball to watch one of her games, and then my oldest daughter is back and forth from College Station, and then I've got two at home that are involved in whatever sports in season. So during volleyball season, it was running to try to get from practice to their game, and then now in the spring, they're both playing softball, so running to see those games when I can. But it's been great. I mean, it's a lot of fun. The college schedule is very family friendly, unlike the big league schedule. There's not a lot of long road trips. Actually, the fact that we don't have lights at our stadium plays in our favor because I'm done by 5 o'clock it's like having a 9 to 5, and I go home and eat dinner with the family and can see the girls' games because they play a little bit later. So it's been great in that regard. And that's one of the reasons I was drawn to coaching in college is because you get competitiveness at a high level, but you don't have the strenuous schedule like you do at the big league level.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things that just from talking with you today and before and just hearing you do interviews as well, I think you're a great fit for HCU because of your faith in Christ and just it comes through very authentic. Like, normally in some situations you might find that somebody kind of, got the job and then just made the faith work, right? But I think it was clear that you've had faith in Christ for a long time. That's helped you through your major league career and now into your coaching career. How much is that affecting your day-to-day as you coach here at HCU?
Well, like I tell parents on our recruiting trips, being a Christian is not something that you just do on the weekends. It's the lens through which you view every decision. I mean, it's it's like who you are. It's not something that you do. And so hopefully that does come out. Like, hopefully people can see that my faith and that our faith as a coaching staff, because the other guys are in the same mode, that it just, that Christ is living through us to minister to everybody that we're around, but primarily to these young men that we have under our care. And so, that's something really the whole reason that I got into college coaching was to be in the young men development business. And there's no greater way to do that than to expose them to the gospel and to show them Jesus through the way that you treat them and through your actions and those kinds of things. And we're not we're not a proselytizing type coaching staff, but we try to create an environment where Christ is living through us, and that by the way that we serve our players, we're ministering to them sometimes without them even knowing it, and hopefully through the course of that and those interactions over years, they can see Jesus through our lives, and that's how I think the greatest strides are made in ministry, whether coaching baseball or whether you're a professional minister. So we're truly about serving our guys, and HCU is a great place for me because I don't have to hide behind any kind of facade. It's like, hey, this is who I am, this is what I believe, and again, we're not cramming it down anybody's throat, but this is a great environment for that, where you don't have to be careful like you would at a public university where they're like, well, you can't talk about your faith. Well, here they encourage you to talk about it, which is great. So it is a good fit, and I've greatly enjoyed coaching here.
Been several months now, but what do you think about the name change and the university's new direction as Houston Christian?
Well, I think in the long run it's going to be a good thing. I think in the short run it's a little tough just because people are
got
so
the
used
HBU
to,
hat right there.
I mean, all of our gear says HBU
right.
and all of that, and I think there's going to be kind of some growing pains in getting used to the new name and getting everything kind of changed over to that and rebranding. But I think it's a great opportunity for the university to kind of head in a new direction and say, some of the old ways of doing things that are gone, and now we're on to a new chapter with a new name, and I think in the long run, once people start to get used to Houston Christian and it becomes as ubiquitous as Houston Baptist University, then that will end up being the right move.
Yep. Looking at this season, 2023, what are some of your main goals for this year?
Well, I think we'd like to have a winning season. I mean, I think we got to start winning, and on all this other stuff is great, but ultimately, as a coach, you're judged on, can you get the team to perform well? And for us, that would look like a winning season this year. And I think it's, we were actually looking at the schedule and figuring that would be a good goal for us. I think it's realistic. I think it's something that needs to happen in order for us to continue to capitalize on the momentum that we talked about earlier in the interview. So that would be probably goal one, is just, hey, winning record and be competitive in conference.
Yeah, Coach, I can sit here and talk to you all day, but I know you guys got to practice before you go on the road trip. Thanks so much for making time for us this afternoon.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on.
Big thanks to Coach Berkman for joining us on the HCU Athletics Insider. Very much enjoyed the conversation and wishing he and the guys very well on the 2023 season, which kicks off this Friday, February 17th on the road at UTRGV. If you're looking for more of this, be sure to let me know. You can follow me on Twitter at GJonesOnAir. Be sure to let me know who you want to hear from next around HCU, and we'll be sure to get a new episode out here very shortly. Thanks for listening.